listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, the new expose on the sexual abuse crisis in Australia's childcare system. A Four Corners investigation that airs tonight on the ABC has uncovered more shocking stories of sexual abuse, with witnesses saying it's far worse than first thought, with claims childcare centres are a hunting ground for alleged pedophiles. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Monday, the 27th of October. The ACCC has launched legal action against Microsoft, accusing the tech giant of misleading around 2.7 million Australians over its Microsoft 365 subscriptions. The consumer watchdog filed proceedings in the federal court, claiming Microsoft told subscribers they had to pay higher prices to keep their plans after adding its AI assistant Copilot or cancel their subscription altogether. But the regulator says Microsoft failed to disclose that customers could keep their old plans without Copilot at a lower price. Here's ACCC Chair Gina Cass-Gottlieb.
Millions of Australian consumers were deprived of the opportunity to make an informed choice about the subscription options available to them.
Prices for Microsoft 365 increased sharply this year, with the personal plan rising 45% and the family plan up 29%. Former US Vice President Kamala Harris has hinted she may run again for the White House. Speaking to the BBC, Ms Harris says she's, quote, not done with public service, but hasn't yet decided whether she'll enter the 2028 presidential race.
I have lived my entire career a life of service, and it's in my bones. And there are many ways to serve. I've not decided yet what I will do in the future beyond what I am doing right now.
Ms Harris is currently in the UK promoting her new book, 107 Days, which recounts her 2024 campaign when she replaced Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee and lost to Donald Trump. And a Collie from Central Queensland is Australia's top working dog after taking out the nationwide Cobbit Challenge, running an incredible 556 Ks over just 3 weeks. Duke from Stonehenge is only the second Collie ever to win the prestigious working dog competition in its 10-year history. Owner Beck Smith, who runs her own property, credits her dogs for helping her through incredibly tough times, including recovering from the devastating floods earlier this year.
You come back home and you're stressed about it all, and you just hang out with all the animals, and honestly, it's the best therapy going.
Well done to Duke. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on a new investigation into sexual abuse within our childcare system. A new expose called The Hunting Ground airs tonight on ABC's Four Corners program. Joining us is journalist Adele Ferguson, who says she was shocked by the abuse her investigation uncovered, and it's a wake-up call for parents, policymakers and the public. Adele also says none of the solutions put forward by the federal government, including banning mobile phones, will protect our children or stop the predators. And a warning, this discussion contains descriptions of child sex abuse that may be distressing for some listeners. Adele, thanks so much for joining us. You're running an explosive investigation on Four Corners tonight about what many would say is an absolute national disgrace happening allegedly in many childcare centres across Australia. Were you shocked by what you uncovered?
I was. We knew it was bad. We just didn't realise how bad it was. We did the first Four Corners in March, and we had access to a few thousand regulatory documents, and we'd spoken to a number of people. But after that first Four Corners, we were just flooded with educators, parents, police, so many. And it shocked me. If you said to me a year ago, will you be doing a big piece on pedophiles in childcare, I would have thought you were, going crazy. And here I am. I can't believe it.
Adele, all of us were shocked by the allegations that were raised in your initial investigation, but also what subsequently happened afterwards, and these allegations against childcare workers. From your point of view, were you asking, how is this happening? What is so broken in the system that we're allowing alleged pedophiles to sexually assault children in childcare centres?
Yeah, it is. It's really hard to believe. And we think it's one or two. And the problem is it's not. As a society, it's very difficult to deal with the fact that there are pedophiles out there, but there are. And what we found from this investigation is their new target is childcare because there's so many lax regulations and looseness in the system.
You uncovered a number of loopholes. Obviously, it's a very complicated story and would differ from childcare centre to the next one. What did you find were the most serious loopholes?
So we gathered together a database of about 150 people who'd been either convicted, charged, or had lost their working with children check due to sexual assault or been banned, and some had got away with it. So that was 150. And what we then found was that less than 2% get convicted. It's such a difficult thing to do because it's children, and most of them don't know how to articulate it or they don't understand. So they drop out before it even goes anywhere. And so it's less than 2% actually get through to a conviction. So there's thousands of them that have been able to walk away free, which is a staggering thing. And you think, how does this happen? It's because the childcare centres overall, there has been lax regulation. The working with children checks have not worked. So they're trying to tweak them at the moment, but they're not the silver bullet. There are centres that are dominated by a philosophy of for-profit. So there are targets for the workers. This is in the for-profit side of things. And so the biggest cost in childcare are wages. And so that's the first thing that gets cut. So you get surveys of thousands of workers who are saying, 77% of workers are saying, at least once a week, there are not enough staff in my centre. So staffing is a major issue in childcare. When you don't have enough staff, supervision falls out the window, and that's when these predators can find the way in. And then when you put on top of that a lack of regulation and workers who aren't properly trained or are too scared to speak up, it's a recipe for disaster.
I'm glad you make that point there, Adele, about the profit run element of this, because a lot of parents, a lot of people know they pay a fortune for childcare centres to put their children in. They, in some circumstances, pay their workers appallingly. They're incredibly lowly paid and they work very, very long hours. How has the childcare sector allowed to be driven by profit, now allegedly, over the safety of children?
Yeah, this is the big question. And what we found is more than 70% of long daycare centres are for profit. And a lot of them are private equity, listed companies, investment banks, property developers. So they really, really want to get those profit as fat as possible, and they'll do anything to cut corners. And that's at the expense of taking care of children.
The other massive red flag here, Adele, is not only is it costing parents tens or hundreds of millions of dollars every year to put their children into care where they think they're being cared for properly, but also the federal government is paying some of these childcare centres hundreds of millions of dollars in government subsidies.
Yeah, it's actually $16 billion that the federal government pays in subsidies. So they're underpinning the business model of these childcare centres by, it's about 70% that they're putting into these centres, which is a fantastic business model, that you're automatically guaranteed to get this money flooding in from the federal government. If you add on the state governments, there's probably about another $5 billion, which is coming in from state governments in grants and various things. So it's a very lucrative business model if you're a for-profit operator and you've got the eye on keeping costs low.
The name of your program tonight on Four Corners is called Hunting Ground. Do you really genuinely believe, by what you've uncovered, that childcare centres are the new hunting ground for sex offenders?
Yeah, I do, unfortunately. We went to, there's a Canadian group, and they built a project called Arachnid, which actually scrapes the dark web. And we asked them to have a look for forums where is there any talk about childcare? And they came back with so much on discussion by predators in these private secret forums on childcare. And they're talking about there are pedophile handbooks where they are talking about where do we go, and they're saying childcare, and they're talking about these are the type of questions you'll get asked in an interview. This is how you answer, how to build trust. This is how you do it. So I've got no doubt that it is a hunting ground because it's just become so easy for them to get in.
And you've spoken with parents that have had scenarios where their children have allegedly been assaulted, and even more concerningly, as you mentioned before, when parents or employees, workers, try to raise serious concerns or serious allegations, they're not followed up or the alleged offenders are not properly prosecuted or reprimanded. Let's take a listen to one of the interviews.
We went to the police a number of times and they took a report, but they said because they can't get evidence, there's not much they could do. I feel like I am pressing a giant red panic button and nobody cares. And I'm just being told that I'm a stupid, overprotective woman.
Adele, that's horrific. So if you are concerned as an employee or a parent that something is going on with your child and you try and raise it to the right authorities, they're not being genuinely listened to or the alleged offenders properly persecuted.
It happens so often, and that's why less than 2% end up in a conviction. Very few end up in charges. In fact, a lot of the predators that we looked at, the ones who do get caught is because they've uploaded child abuse material to the dark web and the police have actually found it and then located them to childcare centres and as childcare workers. It's not actually the childcare centres that are flagging this, and it then becomes charges and a conviction, which is another deep problem in the childcare sector. It's the police that are finding these people.
In regards to what solutions are out there, we've seen lots of promises. We had a Royal Commission a number of years ago. We now know, we've spoken to many educators over recent years, as you would have, where the governments at the time of the day, whether that's Labor or Liberal, have not even adopted the recommendations. But both sides of politics have done nothing to stop this horrific abuse in childcare centres.
That's right. And in terms of that Royal Commission, it didn't really touch on childcare. That was a big omission there. And it really is time to have a proper look at childcare because so many of the experts I've spoken to are saying that at the very least, we need to have a National Childcare Commission which can oversee this $22 billion sector. And it should be properly resourced and it should have properly trained people because we've got this state-based system that's very piecemeal. Nobody really talks to each other. Regulators don't talk to the police. It's all very haphazard and it needs to change. We also need to be looking at the staffing levels properly. And you know, the experts are saying that we really need to scrutinise the role of for-profit in the childcare sector because it really dominates and it doesn't seem to be working.
Adele, we've seen many promises, especially from the federal government over the last couple of months to try and fix this crisis within our childcare centre, including installing CCTV and also banning mobile phones. Do you think that will do anything to protect our children?
No, not at all. So banning mobile phones, in the case of Ashley Griffith, who is now serving a life imprisonment, he would take in 2 mobile phones and set up tripods. And in some of those centres, there was CCTV and he still got away with it. So CCTV is not the answer. And what they're proposing anyway is 300 trials, 300 centres have a trial of CCTV. In terms of mobile phones, people can take a second phone in or you can buy glasses that have cameras in them. You can actually get a camera in your lapel as a button. So that these people, there are ways to do it. The fundamental problem is if you don't have enough staff, then that's when they can do these things. That's when they can avoid the CCTV. That's when they can smuggle in the phone. So those sort of things are just very cosmetic.
We really appreciate your incredibly important work on shining a light again on the serious downfalls and loopholes within our childcare system. It's incredibly important we protect our children. Adele, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That episode, Hunting Ground, airs tonight on the ABC's Four Corners program. That was ABC journalist Adele Ferguson. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.